President Trump has been in office for over 100 days, and already his policies are causing serious trouble in rural America. From cutting funding at the Department of Agriculture, impacting food banks that help small farmers, to his chaotic tariff decisions, the damage is becoming clear. A growing farming crisis is spreading across Iowa, the state long seen as the agricultural heart of the United States. In 2025 alone, Iowa's agriculture sector may lose over $40 billion, pushing countless farming families closer to bankruptcy. Small farms, once the backbone of rural communities, are now among the hardest hit, caught in the middle of the tariff war and disappearing from America's agricultural map. Iowa, a state that strongly backed Trump during the 47th presidential election, is now leading the charge against his trade policies. What exactly is happening to U.S. agriculture? Why are so many former Trump supporters feeling misled? Subscribe to 3 Daily News and hit the notification bell to uncover the full truth in this video. Iowa, once proudly known as the farming stronghold of America, is now caught in a crisis unlike anything before. As the leading U.S. producer of corn, soybeans, and pork, Iowa's farms have always been more than just businesses. They've represented a way of life and a model of rural strength. But the Trump administration's new tariffs are placing enormous pressure on these farmers, many of whom now feel abandoned by the man they once trusted. According to the Iowa Pork Producers Association, the state currently holds 33% of the nation's hog inventory, supporting over 120,000 jobs and contributing roughly $40.5 billion to the economy from pork production and processing. Iowa also leads in corn and soybean production, with 2.4 billion bushels of corn harvested in 2023. In total, agriculture supports about 19% of Iowa's workforce, or nearly 385,000 jobs. But the damage from these tariffs is staggering. A report from Farm Credit shows Iowa farmers' net crop income fell by 38% for corn and 40% for soybeans in 2024 compared to the year before. The result? A deep feeling of betrayal. These farmers once stood firm behind Trump's economic nationalism, believing tariffs would protect them. Instead, the tariffs have disrupted global trade, causing top export markets like China to retaliate with tariffs on American farm goods. This led to plunging commodity prices, weaker markets, and tighter financial pressure on small and mid-sized farms. Anger is rising across Iowa's farming communities. At a recent town hall hosted by Senator Chuck Grassley, local farmers clashed in heated arguments over Trump's trade moves. The divide is clear in a community that once stood solidly behind the former president. A survey of 3,000 farmers found that 54% no longer support using tariffs as a negotiation tactic. Many now feel left behind, with policies working against them, not for them. This growing crisis threatens not just local farms, but the entire future of American agriculture. It raises critical questions. What role should trade policy play in the rural economy? Can these communities survive without urgent changes? The current crisis began back in 2018, during Trump's first term, when his administration launched a full-on trade war with China. The U.S. imposed heavy tariffs on many Chinese imports, and in response, China hit back. American farm goods, especially soybeans, pork, and corn, became major targets. In July 2018, China imposed a 25% tariff on these items, up from just 3% on soybeans. The impact was devastating. U.S. soybean prices fell sharply, making them much harder to sell overseas. China, the world's largest soybean buyer, shifted its imports to Brazil and Argentina. This led to huge stockpiles of unsold soybeans in the U.S. and added more pressure to already struggling small and mid-sized farms. According to data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the trade war had ripple effects that are still being felt today. U.S. soybean exports to China dropped sharply from 32.9 million metric tons in 2017 to only 14.3 million tons in 2018, the lowest level seen in more than a decade. China's move toward buying from Brazil and Argentina severely cut the U.S. share in the Chinese soybean market. Chinese customs data shows that America's share of China's soybean imports fell from 40% in 2016 to just 21% by 2024. The result? A surge in unused soybean stockpiles in the U.S., adding pressure to already weak prices and cutting farm incomes. And it wasn't just soybeans. Other key farm goods like pork, corn, and wheat were also hit hard by China's retaliation. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, American farm exports to China fell from $19.4 billion in 2017 to only $9.1 billion in 2018. This massive drop forced many small farms to close, leading to a new wave of bankruptcies. Court records show that Chapter 12 farm bankruptcy filings went up 24% between 2018 and 2019, the highest rate in 10 years. Agricultural states like Iowa, Illinois, and Kansas were among the hardest hit, with total losses estimated in the billions. Though the government did offer billions in relief aid, many farmers said it wasn't nearly enough to save their businesses. Some small-scale farmers complained that most of the financial help went to large farms and corporate agribusinesses, leaving them behind as they dealt with rising debts and high production costs. But this trade war wasn't just about dollars. It took a deep emotional toll on U.S. farmers. Many who once supported the policies felt abandoned, and trust in leadership began to fall in rural communities. Tragically, the stress, both financial and emotional, led some farmers into depression and even suicide. In short, the 2018-2020 tariff policies brought widespread harm to U.S. agriculture, especially to small and medium-sized farms. While the original goal was to defend the domestic economy, the result left many farmers feeling lost and betrayed. So the question is Trump really acting as a responsible leader? Or have these tariffs become more of a political habit than a smart strategy? Now in 2025, as Trump steps into his second term, the blow to American agriculture, especially in Iowa, has returned with full force. A new round of tariffs has just been introduced by his administration. This time, the target is crucial farming supplies, like fertilizer, machinery, and other essential parts. Many are now calling it the second wave of tariffs, and it's hitting small farmers the hardest, those still struggling to recover from the last trade war. In early 2025, the Trump administration slapped a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, including farm equipment and fertilizer. Tariffs on some Chinese goods also went up to as high as 45%. This sent farming costs soaring. Small farmers, who lacked the power to buy in bulk or negotiate deals, were especially vulnerable. According to Iowa Public Radio, fertilizer and machinery prices jumped, pushing input costs way up, while crop prices stayed flat. Even worse, there were fertilizer shortages. Canada, which supplies about 85% of the potash used in U.S. agriculture, was directly affected by the new tariffs. This forced many farmers to either use lower quality fertilizers or reduce their usage, resulting in smaller crop yields. Meanwhile, big markets like China, Canada, and Mexico started shifting their supply chains, trying to avoid American goods and the risk of more tariffs. China, once the largest buyer of U.S. soybeans, now mostly buys from Brazil, which controls around 70% of the market. As a result, U.S. soybean exports to China have dropped again, from 32.9 million tons in 2017 to just 14.3 million tons in 2018. And now, many small farms just can't survive. Bloomberg Law reports that Chapter 12 farm bankruptcies jumped 55% in 2024 compared to the year before, and that trend is still rising into 2025. Iowa, Illinois, and Kansas continue to suffer the worst impacts, with billions in estimated losses, worsening farmer morale, and a sense of hopelessness growing by the day. This second tariff wave in 2025 has pushed America's farm sector, especially small operations, to the edge of collapse. With production costs rising fast, export markets shrinking, and little meaningful support from Washington, many farmers now see no clear path forward. Is America really planning its next move, or just repeating the same old mistakes on the world's economic chessboard? Trump may now be alienating the very farmers who once stood behind him. Is this really the way to make America great again? And the crisis isn't stopping at Iowa's borders. It has spread across the rural U.S., hitting agricultural powerhouses like Nebraska, Missouri, and Indiana. As Trump's new tariffs put more pressure on the entire farm supply chain, data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture shows a 10% drop in farm exports in 2023, the lowest in 3 years. In particular, U.S. soybean and corn exports fell by 17% and 18% compared to the year before, largely due to tougher competition from Brazil and Argentina. The drop in exports has set off a chain reaction in related industries. Fertilizer companies, farm equipment makers, and transport providers are all facing large-scale order cancellations. Many small and mid-sized businesses in these areas have had to cut back operations or close entirely, leading to more job losses in rural areas. On the international front, trade allies are starting to see the U.S. as an unpredictable partner because of unstable trade policies. China, once the biggest buyer of U.S. farm goods, has now turned to Brazil and other South American countries for its imports. As a result, millions of Americans living in rural areas now face an uncertain road ahead. A recent report by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics revealed that rural unemployment climbed to 6.5% at the start of 2025, well above the national average of 4.8%. Many farming households have had no choice but to sell their land, abandon their farms, or switch careers to make ends meet. This isn't just an economic issue. It's a serious social crisis. It raises serious concerns about the strength of today's trade policies and highlights the urgent need for a more well-rounded strategy to defend American agriculture and rural livelihoods. In parts of rural America where President Donald Trump once had strong support, a quiet but growing sense of rebellion is emerging. It's not through protests or riots, but through deeply painful stories of families forced to part with their land, close farms, and witness the end of long family legacies. Farm Aid reports that many farmers in Iowa are facing steep drops in crop prices, along with surging costs for essentials due to new tariffs. One such farmer, Josh Mansky, who grows corn and soybeans in Alona, Iowa, said that most of his crops used to go to China and other Asian nations. But those trade ties broke down quickly, leaving him and many others barely hanging on. The sense of betrayal goes far beyond financial stress. On platforms like social media, farmers have used hashtags like #FarmersBetrayed to share their stories and draw attention to their struggles. Yet their efforts are mostly being overlooked. Even conferences and appeals to Congress have brought little real action, adding to feelings of neglect. In a recent online post, President Trump announced, "Tariffs will go on external products on April 2nd. Have fun." This message outraged many in the farming world, who felt mocked in their time of hardship. Music legend and Farm Aid founder Willie Nelson has spoken out, calling on farmers to stand up against today's trade policies. He compared the current situation to the 1980s farm crisis, when hundreds of thousands of farms were lost and families were pushed into poverty. In this light, many farmers are now asking, is this the victory we were promised? Does protectionism really protect us? Or is it causing a new kind of suffering? As harmful trade decisions continue to hit agriculture hard, the calls for fairness and responsibility grow louder. In the middle of this worsening crisis, one question remains: what path is left for American farmers? And does President Trump still have time to change direction before he completely loses the trust of the very heartland that once powered him into the White House? For farmers, the solution isn't to sit back and wait for one-time bailout deals. What's needed is a strategic change. Experts from the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, and the U.S. Agricultural Council are calling on the government to increase investment in local supply chains, reduce dependence on exports, and promote sustainable farming methods. These methods would help farmers boost production without relying so much on imported fertilizers or expensive equipment. Also, major changes are needed in agricultural lending. Current policies must be updated so that small farmers can access low-interest loans more easily, helping them stay afloat as input costs rise. The federal government should also set up clearer emergency relief programs that give priority to family farms instead of big corporate agribusinesses. As for Trump, if he wants to win back the trust of rural America, he must make a major turnaround. That means reopening trade discussions with top partners like China and Mexico, and removing tariffs on essential farming supplies. But more than that, Trump needs to prove he's really paying attention. Not with slogans like "Make America Great Again," but with real policies that protect the hard-working people who are feeding the nation. Because without farmers, and without harvests, there is no greatness, no matter who sits in the White House. The crisis hitting farms in Iowa, Nebraska, and Missouri is not just about money. It's a warning to the entire country about the high cost of careless political choices. When millions are left behind and fertile land turns into overgrown, useless fields, it's no longer just a rural issue. it becomes a national threat. The traditional farming economy, once the foundation of America's strength, is breaking down, bit by bit. And the very people who generate real physical wealth, the farmers, are the first to be thrown under the bus in political games. These farmers were once seen as symbols of strength, loyalty, and hard work. Today, all that remains is silence, betrayal, and loss. So if even America's farmers, those who literally feed the nation, are no longer defended, then where is this country truly headed? This isn't just a story about tariffs or trade deals anymore. It's about fairness. It's about unity. It's about whether the United States still cares about the people who put food on our tables. Now, more than ever, American agriculture deserves respect and protection. Because if the U.S. loses the ability to feed itself, then who really wins? And when that time comes, will America still be the country we once believed in? Stay tuned for more updates on Trump's next moves and what's happening behind the scenes. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next critical breakdown of American politics.